Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Some mysteries echo through time, leaving behind more questions than answers. And the story I'm about to share with you is one of those, an unsolved case that has haunted the hearts of detectives, journalists, and everyday people for decades. This is the true, tragic story of the boy in the box, a nameless victim whose identity remains lost to time, despite endless efforts to uncover the truth. It all started on a cold February day in 1957. The woods in Fox Chase, a quiet part of northeast Philadelphia, were barren, the trees naked against the gray sky. There, in a clearing, lay an old cardboard box. Inside was something no one was prepared for. A local college student, out checking his animal traps, stumbled upon the box. But what was inside was far from an animal. It was the body of a little boy. Terrified, the young man hesitated. He didn't immediately call the police, fearing that his illegal trapping would get him into trouble. Days passed before the discovery was reported by another man who had seen the box. When police arrived on the scene, they found a haunting sight. A young boy, around 4 to 6 years old, lying lifeless inside the box. He was naked, his body wrapped in a cheap plaid blanket. His hair had been crudely chopped, and his small face showed signs of bruising. The police thought this case would be solved quickly. After all, someone had to be looking for this boy. But as the hours turned into days, no one came forward. No missing child report matched his description. It was as if this little boy never existed. The investigation began in earnest. The box had once contained a bassinet, sold by J.C. Penney, but even that lead went nowhere. Thousands of flyers were distributed, and local hospitals were contacted to see if anyone had treated a child matching the boy's description. Yet, silence was all they received. The boy's body itself was meticulously examined. His weight indicated he was malnourished, and his skin was marred by bruises and scars. Some of his injuries were old, showing signs of long-term abuse, while others were fresh. Most hauntingly, his fingers and toenails were trimmed, and his skin was clean, suggesting that, despite the horrific abuse, someone had cared for him in small ways, at least towards the end. But who would care for a child so minimally and yet subject him to such neglect and violence? As days turned to weeks and then months, the case went cold. But theories started to emerge, each one more disturbing than the last. One theory, popular at the time, was that the boy was the son of an unwed mother who had been forced to give him up. In 1950s America, the stigma of having a child out of wedlock was intense, and some believed the boy had been dumped in the woods to erase the shame. But despite the wide appeal of this theory, no woman ever came forward. Another, more harrowing theory suggested that the boy had been the victim of a human trafficking ring. In a time before widespread DNA testing in national databases, children could easily disappear. And some believed that the boy's abuse and isolation pointed to a life of slavery, perhaps sold to a family who treated him as less than human. And then there was the most terrifying theory of all, that the boy had been part of a foster home or orphanage where children were regularly abused, a theory supported by the state of his body and the fact that no one came to claim him. It was suggested that he had lived in squalor for years, beaten and starved before finally succumbing to his injuries. His body, discarded like trash, a heartbreaking end to a life of suffering. The police never gave up. Over the years, they chased every lead, no matter how small. They even dressed the boy's body in child's clothing and took photographs of him sitting up, hoping that someone might recognize him from the altered images. It was a last, desperate attempt to put a name to the face that haunted them. Years later, a psychic claimed that the boy had come from a local foster home. Investigators, desperate for answers, followed the psychic's lead and went to the home in question. But once again, the trail went cold. No evidence, no connection. For decades, the mystery of the boy in the box sat unsolved, and as time passed, the case slipped further from public memory. But the world of forensic investigation has made incredible leaps in recent years, and with these advancements came renewed hope. In 1998, the boy's body was exhumed in the hopes that DNA might finally provide the answers that so many had sought. And while the initial tests provided some new clues, like the boy's possible ancestry, they still didn't lead to a definitive identification. But in 2019, a new hope emerged: genetic genealogy. It's the same technique used to solve the Golden State Killer case, and it relies on the DNA of distant relatives to map out a family tree. Forensic experts have been working tirelessly to find the boy's family through this method, though. As of today, no conclusive match has been made, but there is hope that the technology will eventually lead to an answer. The case of the boy in the box is a stark reminder of how fleeting life can be, and how some stories are never fully told. This nameless child, abandoned in a cold, lonely field, has become a symbol of lost innocence. His life, short and tragic, touched the hearts of many who have worked tirelessly to give him a name and some semblance of justice. And while his identity remains unknown for now, investigators, genealogists, and even the public have not forgotten him. Maybe one day, we will learn his story, who he was, where he came from, and how his life came to such a brutal and tragic end. Thank you for listening to this heartbreaking tale. If you want to hear more real-life mysteries like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Together, we can keep these stories alive and search for the answers that justice demands.